So when we look here at the Codex Borgia, and we look at the forming of the calendar, the calculation of the calendar, when we look at these 20 uh, days with these revolving 13, and how these wheels affect the calculation of time. When we see here the forming of these ancient calendars for the 260-day cycle. When we look here at this codex, live, you feel me? Just real live footage, right? Real live. You know what I'm saying? We in the field, man. You know what I'm saying? So here we go. Let's run it back. All right. So when we look at these 13 lords or overseers of day and the 9 of night, and how that interchanging of the 9 stages of the night, when you look at 9 and night, the connection linguistically with 9 and night, and even the goddess Nut, who is in Egypt, who represents the night. You understand the connection of the night, and it's really 9 90-minute hours. I mean, minutes, excuse me. So that they're 90-minute hours composed to 60-minute hours. So that makes up 180 for the transition of sunset to sunrise. When you understand the transition of the solar barge in the underworld and the Jaguar priesthood and representation of what it was seen to go into the underworld and the calculation of these times. So these signs and symbols, these day signs, all have a connection with an energy, with the frequency, with something that we can understand as a behavior. But before we could understand these things as a behavior, these animal zootypes, in particular, these 20 animal zootypes we see being used, crocodile, and the many different animals that you see is 20. And when we understand the 20 in the rotation, and we find, you know what I'm saying, the crocodile, the wind, the house, the lizard, serpent, deer, rabbit, water, dog, rain, flower, vulture, eagle, all of these different animals in regards to the day signs we find. And when you look at the night and the 9 stages of the night and the names of those, these animal zootypes are displaying a lot. So sometimes in demonology is what it seemed to be. The demonhood of ancient Mexico was perhaps the most gruesome which ever haunted any race of men. It took many shapes and varied somewhat with locality, and it scarcely resembles and recognized systems of demonology. European and Asiatic, those demons who most dread were monsters ascending from the above, who were indeed the stars. The interpreter of the Codex says to them, the proper signification of his name is the fall of the demons, whom they say were stars, and even still there are stars in heaven called after their names, which are the following. Yakitsakuli, these are the different names. I'm reading out of this here. And it has these different names of these different gods here. And so when we look at these things, and this is a good book here, Mexico and Mysteries in Mexico, the Crane Secrets of the Occult Lore of Ancient Mexicans. So when we look at these things, it's really breaking down the calendar and really breaking down the night and the travels of the night. Like we were talking earlier about the solar barge, and we can look into each individual sign and look into its meaning. if we were to choose to. So when we look at these codices, so the 8 supernatural scenes of the calendar associations. This is 3 of the 20 deities in 80 days. So when you look at the calculation of 80 days and all of the animals that would be accumulated in that 13-day cycles of 20 days, when you see here the 20-day signs on his body and costume, it gives you a better understanding. When we're talking about the demonology, we understand that the star systems and the relation to the heaven, Venus, the pole star, most particularly, and divine law, divine order, showing in the most gruesome way that they were aligned with the divine and in the order of the divine nature, the Neter. So when you look at what we call the Netaru, the gods, and the writing of the gods, the Medu Neter, and what we see in here is no different. These writing styles are using the localities of the species in these areas, as well as the celestial landmarks in these areas. So when we look at Halloween, Hallows Eve, and the crossover of the dead, the jaguar, and the day that one has, when you understand timekeeping, it was in remembrance of the dead that made one count the time, the days of past since their loved one lived. So we understand the priesthood and the formulating of the priesthood and the development of the priesthood and the dead, the association with the dead. When we see Halloween and we see how they diminish, whether it's the skull and bones, we understand the dead and how sacred the dead and the protection of the dead, the burials of the dead, and these things in ancient culture were. To the point that timekeeping, it was said that some of these people would come back as at certain appointments in the heavenly realm. This is how we see certain things being misinterpreted in regards to the Shining Ones and the Spaniards, the conquistadors. But anyways, however, check this out. What we got right here, the Codex Borgia, and Mexicans and Mysteries of Mexico and the Current Secrets of the Occult Lore. So when we see here, we was looking at earlier at the day signs, it puts them in a better There we go. So it has the day signs here of the Mexican calendar. So when we look at Mexican astrology, it says the Mexican system of astrology, although it is considerable resembles with those of Europe and Asia, it is really a system of native growth and origin and must be studied separately from all others. It is based on what is known as the Tunat Amal, or so-called calendar of the Aztecs. But I will deal with it here very practically. In order for the students of other astrologies may compare it with the systems they study, and because it is certainly time that this particular American system should be presented to students of the occult in a plain and understandable manner. Although knowledge of the calendar is essential in order to grasp the fundamentals of Mexican religion, but its significance has perhaps been heightened by the difficulties which certainly attend its consideration. I haven't doubt, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So it goes back into the day count on a lunar reckoning. The symbols appear to have been those of gods and other. Okay, so I was telling you earlier about the 13 and how the 13 represent the day and the 9 for the not for the day. So you see here the 20. These are the night lords. So when you look at 9 and night, we were talking about earlier the connection. Understand why 9. The lords of the day, the lords of the night. It says here, Gamma describes the 9 gods of companions and as Señores de la Noche, lords of the night, and from his obscure rendering, Cristobal de Casillas, as well as from Manuel Mistrelos de Indios, we gathered that they held sway over night hours from sunset to sunrise. So this is why they're 9. They're 9 90-minute hours, which is what makes a measuring of 144 degrees from the ending of the twilight, knowing the tropics, be able to calculate pure night and the transition of the night sky in that 9 hour of 90 minutes, 180 minutes. You see what I'm saying? 270, 60, you see what I'm saying? And so on, so on, so on, so on, until you get to 9 90-minute hours. Then for the daytime, you see the 13 days and how that day lords. So this is where the 13 realms of above and the 9 under. In this representation, when you see this, you understand the 9 and the night neat and how the forming of night came about. And the letter N like no, and the city, populace on. And when you understand all of these deep connections linguistically, it reveals a lot esoterically in regards to the ancient lands, the ancient teachings. We understand the significance of the 13, Mu, night, Nu, and the double crown. See here Venus, we understand the significance of Venus being the pole star in these ancient cultures. So when you look at the mythos, the stars play a heavenly realm in the forming of the mythos here. Peace.